Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
And welcome back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650. We have Rudy Kisher here, along with Gordon Maynard from MKS Law, immigration and citizenship lawyers. Great discussion so far. Now, walk me through this again, because one of the stories when I first started doing these shows with you is about this crazy system where you would hire a courier to go on a certain date to stand in line to get an application into the government that only opened up for one day. So what was that, and is that still happening? What was the setup?
You're talking about parental sponsorship, because one of the avenues for immigration to Canada is family class immigration. Mm-hmm. The component of that is sponsoring your parents or your grandparents. If you're a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, you can sponsor your parents from overseas.
Right.
And that used to be quite a component of immigration to this country. We used to bring in 20,000 parents and grandparents a year. But that number steadily dropped. And as it dropped, and people were still putting in applications, huge backlogs developed. So the processing time for parents became quite long, quite lengthy. The government put a moratorium on parents for a while, and then they decided that they would put a quota on them. And what they would do is they would open up the window, open up the door to applications in January.
Nice time of year, yeah.
Yep. And people would submit their applications, and the government said, we will take the first 5,000 applications. So that was the process that was used.
So you would hire somebody to stand in line.
No,
it almost sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
No, we didn't hire somebody to stand in line. We did. We gave the applications to couriers and asked for express delivery.
I arranged the courier. So we paid extra to make sure a guy was there at 5:30 in the morning. You can imagine they're only taking 5,000 applications.
I like the way Gordon spins it. No, we just paid extra for personal delivery.
We didn't have a truckload of applications. And there were people that had truckloads of applications.
So this special courier would stand in line at 5:30 in the morning, hoping to be one of the 5,000 on that one day in January.
Just at least get the application in.
Right.
Yeah. And the application would get in. And so last year, most of the applications that we put in were accepted.
The applications. Yeah.
But then the government this year, we weren't the problem. There were people that literally did have truckloads of applications backed up to the door. And the government wanted to control that. They saw that the opening the gate was not a good method and having a time limit on it. So instead they said, okay, we're going to open up the gate for a month. That was the process that was put in place this year. So from January 5th to February 5th, the gates were open.
Is this done online now or still in person?
No, you didn't have to deliver it in person. You just had to get it into the office.
It's not online, though.
No. You just had to deliver it. So they would take all the applications in, then they would shut the door, and then they would randomly draw. And they said 10,000 applications this year.
So not the first 5,000, just random now.
Random. It's a lottery system.
Okay.
So that's the system that was put in place this year. People are still waiting to find out whether their application to sponsor their parents got drawn. We're supposed to get the news pretty soon. What's the delay been? The delay has been that there was some skullduggery. People are clever. If somebody had 5 siblings in Canada, 5 children, every one of the children would apply to sponsor the same set of parents. So there were 5 applications governing the same parent set. Or one would sponsor the mother with the dad as the applicant accompanying, or accompanying dependent. Yeah. The other would sponsor the dad with the mother as the accompanying. So you'd multiply your chances of being drawn. So the government has been going through all the applications and trying to weed out all the common ones so that every set of parents has the same opportunity in the draw.
So you think that's going to be the way it goes forward now, this setup instead of the lining up?
Yeah, as long as you're going to have a cap on it, I think that's the only fair way.
So with the government we have in place now, they seem to be moving more towards this family style instead of the more hard and dried economic cases coming into the country. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I think it's clear from their quotas. They ran, it's been a while now, but their election platform, if you can remember, was very much based, we look at immigration differently than the Conservatives. That immigration became a big wedge issue as multiculturalism did, and sort of rights for minorities became a big issue during the election. And their stance on immigration was that, immigrants are, what we care about immigration is family immigration and our humanitarian compassionate obligations, and also resettlement of refugees from abroad. And so we see that in the quotas. Out of the 305,000, they increased dramatically the number of, as we know, the refugees that were coming, but also on this family class, whereas the Conservatives have sort of tried to keep it at 5,000. One of the first acts that the old Minister McCallum did when he came into power was to double the number from 5,000 to take 10,000 applications under this parental and grandparent class, right?
But it goes back to the conversation we had about the foreign workers and people coming into the country. We need skilled people, and you've got a bricklaying company, can't find people with no skill to work. So having older parents and so on coming into the country and grandparents coming in, those are not filling the jobs.
Yeah,
no, they're not economic.
They're not. And I mean, I think there's
so so if the number stays the same and you're taking more of those people and less of the economic people, then those jobs are really going to go wanting. What do you think?
Yep. This gets to that point of really setting, what's our target and how do you distribute it? And if you're going to take in more parents, it means you have to take in less of something else. Well, what's that something else?
Or back to the Liberal floating out the 400,000 number, bringing more people in.
Well, Chris Alexander, right, from the Conservative Party, and a contestant, he was for the leadership. He was talking about a $400,000 number. So it's not just a Liberal idea. There are people that believe more immigration will make Canada stronger, but I don't think they're talking about family immigration. And definitely, I mean, one of the things that the Liberals have done is sped up, and I've seen a dramatic increase. I think Gordon would agree with me in terms of spousal applications are getting processed a lot faster overseas. So they're trying to bring that number down, which I think makes sense. The parent and grandparent class, I mean, people have different views on this. My view is definitely when I take a look at that, not well, if it's my mother, it makes total sense.
Of course.
But it's good for me. Is it good for Canada?
Well, that's one of the things.
Let's look at that, because this gets to the issue too of the revamping of the express entry and that little tweak they did to say you're going to get points for siblings in Canada because there's a social value to it. What's the social value of having your parents here? And is it truly correct to say they're not economic? We don't have a good child care system in this country.
No.
We expect immigrants to come in. We expect them to have their children here. And then we say to them, but we're not going to let your parents in.
It's $2,000 a month for childcare, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a value that perhaps is overlooked in having parents here. And again, we come down to that balance. Are those parents healthy? What's the demand they're going to put on the system? What's the benefits they're going to bring? Can we draw a line and say you're not economic and therefore we put you at the back of the bus?
But we've also arranged a system, which is the super visa, which allows them to come as visitors to take care of their grandkids for that time period, but not to move here permanently and not to give them medical access. So I think we can address that issue if the real issue is coming to take care of my kids for a little. I mean, I think most people, when they immigrate to Canada, don't anticipate that they're going to be able to bring their parents and grandparents to come live with them. And somehow I think it's come up now in the Canadian sort of mentality. It's definitely out there in the political landscape that it is sort of a right and that immigrants won't come without this ability. And I don't think that's true at all. Right?
It's all a question of the balance point.
Yeah. But then is Canada a hot destination for people around the world to come?
I don't think people understand how hot it is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You can afford to say you're not going to bring your parents and grandparents.
We're one of 4 countries that actively seek immigrants around the world in terms of a skilled immigration system. There's us, there's the United States, which is getting very tough, as we know. There's Australia, there's New Zealand, and the UK has also has a bit of a point system. But there are very few countries that actively seek, economic immigration.
Which is why every time I see you, there's something new to talk about. There's always something going on in immigration and citizenship. Gordon Maynard, thank you. Nice to see you again. Thanks for coming back. Rudy Kisher you've been a regular on the last few shows.
Yeah.
We'll see if you come back.
It's been great being here. Thanks a lot, Zach.
All right, MKS Law in downtown Vancouver. Our great conversation continues on a future show of The Law Show right here on CL 650.